Merry Christmas. That was Silent Night, arranged chord melody for the ukulele and all playable just with your right hand thumb. There's a link below where you can download the tablature to work through, but I'll also put the tablature line by line on the screen. Now, as always with songs like this, it's great to look at the chord progression because many of the shapes we're going to play with our left hand are regular chords that you'll already know, and a few of them are chords that you know, but maybe you don't know them in the inversion on the fingerboard that we've got here. So we'll gradually build up to that. The other thing about this piece is it's in 3/4 time, waltz time. So it goes 1, 2, 3. Silent night, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Just doing the chords G7 and C. F, C, F, C, G7 and C. Stay on the C, G7, C. So, as you can see from that, it's just a simple 3-chord song with that nice 1, 2, 3 rolling waltz time. An important part of this arrangement is how we bring out the melody, and often that melody is on top of a chord, and how we then take some of the chords that don't have a melody on and push them into the background. We're going to be doing a lot of thinking about how loud we play each individual beat, chord, note with our thumb. Let's have a look at that first line. We start off with open, open, 3. And we're going to strum those 3, not play that A string. Now the melody here would be da, da, da. But there's an extra little chord in there, just a couple of notes. And that's helping keep that rhythm going, but it needs to be quiet because it's not part of a main melody note. So like this. Silent night, and again. Okay, and in the next bar the same thing happens. No fingers at all. The melody note is the second string open, which we hear on that first beat as part of this 3-string chord, but we don't want to just leave a big space like silent night. There's a big gap there. So we're going to play 2 more chords on beat 2 and beat 3, but they're just a couple of strings. They're not getting in the way of that melody note, and they're very quiet. And the good news is the next 2 bars are exactly the same. So that's the first line done with. Let's have a go at it. 1, 2, 3. Next line, we go to our G7 chord, but to begin with, it's not the familiar G7 down there. So if you're not used to this one, this might take a little bit of practice to get your fingers to go to the right place. It's 4, 5, 3, 5. Actually, if we were to slide it down till our index finger fell off the end, it's just an E7 chord, but it's an E7 chord played with the wrong 3 fingers so that we have this one spare, and we can slide it up till this one's at the 3rd fret of the E string. And that G7 has the correct melody note on the top, this 5th fret note on the A string, the note of D. Now we hear that note twice. All is... But there's nothing happening on beat 2, so again we're going to do a small strum, just maybe catch a couple of strings and do it nice and quietly, like this. Now the next melody note is down here on the 2nd fret, and the chord is still a G7, so we can just play our familiar G7 down there. And we do that once, but yet again we need to keep that rhythm going, so just a couple of strings quietly. And the next 2 bars do a very similar thing, but much, much easier. Just a regular old C chord, a fill-in chord, and then another C chord. And then we're on C, but we want a G note melody now, so we move that finger to the 2nd string, 3rd fret, just play 3 strings and 2 fill-in miniature little quiet chords. So the second line sounds like this. Now on the third line we go to an F chord, and to start with our melody note is our open A string, so we can just go, and again nothing happening on beat 2, so fill in that space with a very gentle strum. Now this is a slightly trickier bar. We're going to keep playing an F chord. We're going to put our little finger down on the 3rd fret of the A string, the 1st string, for the first beat. That's the melody note at that point. Another small chord, just the 2 and open that we're already holding on the bottom 2 strings. But then we need to fill in a little extra fast, a little bit of rhythm on the melody. So I'm going to move that top note down to the 2nd fret, play the 1st string 2nd fret, then take that finger off so I can play the 1st string open, but I'm going to try and catch the string below it as well. This is why it's important to keep hold of the chord when you're doing this and not let go and play those notes individually, because that 1st finger is already holding that note down. We get this. Tricky thing to get your thumb going to the right place on that one. Then we're back to a C chord, and it's this one again, open, open, 3, nothing on the A string because we need that note as our melody. Fill in again, open 1st string, and then the 2nd string which you're still holding at the 3rd fret, and then no fingers at all. We've had this bar before at the end of the 1st line. 3 strings, then 2 little chords. Now I'm notating all these small chords as 2 strings, but don't worry if you hit 3 strings quietly or 1 string, as long as it's quite clear to the listener that this is part of the accompaniment and not part of the melody. So let's listen to that line. Good news, the next line is exactly the same. The next line we go to a G7, it's the same one we had before, 4, 5, 3, 5, and then a little chord, and then another big one, and then another G7. We've not had this one before. Our melody note goes right up here to the 8th fret. So we can play a G7 there by barring the 7th fret and holding down the 8th fret on the top string. Now you can bar with your 1st finger, but high up the neck like that, I often like to bar with my 2nd finger. It stops me having to squash my hand in up against there. But if you've got a bigger uke, you might not have that problem. So there's our G7 really high up. Now I'm not going to put a quiet chord in here now because we're going to be focusing on playing 2 melody notes and getting back down there. So I'm giving us some breathing space. We just simply play the 5th fret on the A string, the 2nd fret on the A string, and then we're into a C chord, which is nice and easy. Big C chord, 2 little ones, and then we slide up the neck again to the 7th fret on the 1st string and the 8th fret on the 2nd string, and that's also a C chord, but with a higher melody note. And we can strum it all, and then just try and hit these lower open strings to keep the rhythm going. So let's listen to that line. And the final line, we go back to our C chord, and then we immediately move that 3rd fret note from the A string to the E string and just play 3 strings, and then we take it off and just play 3 strings. So we've got 3 chords in a row there. Really, they're all the same chord, they're all C, we're just playing them with a higher or lower melody note on the top. So then we go to this partial G7 chord, and actually we're going to play open, 2, 3, so it's more like a partial G chord. It'll change to a G7 in a moment, but I recommend you use your 2nd and 3rd fingers. because we're going to need our first finger here straight away. So if you play those 3 strings, open 2, 3 with your second and third fingers, then your first finger plays the first fret of the second string. So you can take off your ring finger, but don't take off your second finger because we need it right there. And then our final chord is just your lowest 2 strings. So let's do the whole thing together. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. I hope you have a fantastic Christmas, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.